Hey YouTube land, Tychanders here doing another action figure review, and today I am doing something that I picked up from the good folks over at Big Bad Toy Store. I was waiting for this to arrive, and it only arrived yesterday. At the time of this recording, it only arrived yesterday. So it is one of the Super 7 G.I. Joe, the Real American Heroes Reaction Plus figures. So if you're familiar with Super 7 and their Reaction line, they tend to do figures similar in vein to this. This is their Martian Trooper from the Mars Attacks figure line. And the normal reaction line that they do is generally 5 points of articulation. So you have shoulder swivels, and you have hip swivel, and then you have a head neck swivel. Depending on the figure, some of them mightn't, depending on what it's based on. But like for the basic ones, you just have like Star Wars, Kenner Star Wars style articulation. So a swivel in the shoulder, a swivel in the hip, and then a swivel in the head. This is the glow-in-the-dark version of the Mars Attack figure. So if it starts glowing because I have this thing set up, it may do, but I'll move them off to the side. So what Reaction Plus is more akin to the old O-ring style G.I. Joe figures, which is what the Serpentor is based off. But before we go into the Serpentor himself, we'll have a look at his packaging. So he does come on a clamshell style packaging, similar to the old vintage G.I. Joe figures. You can see the G.I. Joe logo. You have the Super 7 logo up the top. It says includes flexible cape, removable hood, and dagger. And then on the back, you have a cross-sell. The classic cross-sell is back with artwork of the other figures that are available. So in this Reaction Plus line, they have done quite a few interesting figures. Some fairly common ones. You have your Cobra Commander, you have Duke. Now, these are all based on their cartoon appearances as opposed to the original action figure line, and we'll get into that in a minute. So for the cartoon appearances, you have a Snake Eyes. Well, actually, sorry. Both, it even says it on the Snake Eyes and the Cobra Bat are based on comic book appearances. But the rest of these, I believe, are all based on the animated, the Sunbow animated series. So you have Cobra Commander, who looks more like the cartoon version. You have Cover Girl, who, again, looks like her cartoon counterpart, where she had the blonde hair instead of the brunette hair. You have a Fatal Fluffy, which was from one of the early episodes where they go to space and they find Tribble-like creatures that turn into these more monstrous creatures called Fatal Fluffies. You have Serpentor, who we have here. We have Ramar, and we have Duke. I believe Duke and Ramar are from the same episode, because it's the one where they have a gladiatorial fight and they force Duke to fight with Ramar. So, and then the other figures that they do at a 2-pack, it's Xamot and Tomax, but it's not their standard version. In the kind of, was it their battle suit, I suppose. It's them in their Extensive Enterprises, is that the right word? Company? Basically their business suits. It's the business suit versions of Xamot and Tomax. So as you can see, there is a file card for this, which is something that they generally haven't done too much of with on some other G.I. Joe product lines. In fact, if I bring it in, as I drop stuff over, this is the Hiya Toys one. They have not done a cross-sell or a... If I flip around the back, you can see there's no file card. The file card seems to be back for the Super 7 one. So for Serpentor, he's the Cobra Emperor. His file name is unknown because he is basically, the idea behind Serpentor, he was genetically grown as the supreme ruler of Cobra. So his primary military speciality is conquest, secondary military speciality is command, birthplace was Cobra Island. It has an MIC 999 SF. I'm not sure if that's in relation to the episode, maybe. I'm not sure what that is. Relation to someone in the comments might be able to solve that part for me. Yeah, his eyes have seen legions of Roman, the legions of Rome trample the Gauls and Nervi into dust. His hand lifted the horsehair baton that signaled the first charge of the Carthaginian armored elephant phalanx, but it is his mind we must fear the most. Though the thoughts of the Cobra Emperor have not drifted from global conquest since the reign of King Solomon. And then it says, I am one born to rule, destined to conquer. Let those who fear me follow me. Let those who oppose me perish, for I am Serpentor, and this I command. So, if you're familiar with the Sunbow animation, this I command was a staple. It was his catchphrase. He would kind of repeat that at the end of most things he would say. So, in like the G.I. Joe movie, it was like, none shall challenge Serpentor. This I command is his kind of opening line. But other than that, you have some nice card art on the box. Now, how this differs from how he was originally packaged is interesting, but again, we'll move on to that in a minute. We'll have a quick look at the figure and his little accessories. Well, I might as well leave the card back in the background and give something to look at. In fact, actually, do it this way. It shouldn't have as much light bouncing off it. So, for the figure, he has a removable dagger. The dagger comes not attached to him in the packaging. He has a dagger that's based on, I think he came with a dagger for the original figure. Now, I don't have the original weaponry that the original figure came with. So he has this fairly standard cloak. It just fits over his arms, similar to how the old Kenner ones would fit on like Lando, Carl Rizian and all that. He does have that serpent scale pattern all around his back. His backpack piece, this is the kind of piece that they say is removable, I believe so. It should be on just a peg, similar to how the old figures backpacks go in. Now, the interesting thing about that is when you have this all taken off, he doesn't have his trademark snakes on the side of his pauldrons. The heads of them are actually part of his backpack, so it looks a little bit weird. His head is supposedly on a ball joint, but you get more swivel than ball joint on it. His arms can rotate all the way around. Let me just see a little bit more light on him. So the arms can rotate around. He has that battle grip with a single jointed elbow. Nothing on the wrist. I was kind of hoping they would add wrist articulation to these guys, just to give him a little bit more oomph. There have been other O-ring lines, modern O-ring lines, that have introduced a swivel in the wrist, and it's not unlike that Hasbro hasn't done that in the past. They did add some swivel in wrists in some of the early 2000 O-ring lines that they did, so it's not something new that was uncommon to them. I'll just pop his cloak back on him if I can do it without breaking the piece that it goes into. See, he looks much better with it all up on top of him. He has a classic O-ring style waist. He has, his legs can split that much. His legs can kick forward, and he has single jointed single jointed knees, and he has a peg hole in the bottom of the feet. Now, we will get a comparison out of the way now, but before that, I just want to drag my measuring tape in. So I'm going to push him back a bit, come to stand a little bit better, and bring back the measuring tape. And I will measure him up. So he should be about 3¼ inches. So you can see he's just around 3¼ to the head, but because of the way the cowl piece on his, or the snake or cobra cowl, I suppose you want to call it, it does pop him up to 4 inches. It gives him extra height over that of a kind of regular figure. So for comparisons, because I have them, here he is alongside his original Hasbro counterpart. And here he is alongside another Hasbro counterpart, but this is a later one that was released in 2008. No, I think it was before that. It might have been 2005 line. He was part of a comic pack, 3-pack, I believe. And he has a few interesting details that the new one doesn't. So we'll have a look at him with the original one. Now, I can't remember if the original one was supposed to have a cowl piece on the back of his head. This is my, like, one of these pieces on his back. I believe he might have done, but my one does not have that. But what I do have for him is this. And we shall see how the new one fares with this thing. This is the original gold plastic, so it can be very brittle over time. This is the original Serpentor's air chariot. So as I was saying, in his original format, when he was released way back in the 80s, or early 90s, 80s, I believe, he was 89 when the movie came out. He was packed with his vehicle. I do believe he did come with a small little dagger, similar to the one that the new one comes with, for his only weapon accessory. But his main accessory was his entire air chariot, it's called. It's something that he's only been packed with a couple of times. The classified 6-inch version does come with a version of that. It was a Pulse exclusive, I believe, or a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive. So it's a bit harder to get. And then there was a 25th anniversary version of Serpentor with a slightly updated version of this air chariot, but for the most part it was the same sculpt, whereas the classified one is completely updated with extra stuff for the classified series as they do. This guy, on the other hand, reuses the exact same mold as the original, with one exception, is that he comes, if we can do it on screen, he comes with a removable helmet, and you can actually see the head underneath. He's a scowling look underneath him, so it is interesting to note that he does have that. I'm just going to readjust my light there so you can get a better look. But for the most part, it is exactly the same molding as the original. The only difference is it's not done in gold plastic. What you will find, you can even see it on my one, he's missing one of the teeth on the top of his snake helmet. The helmets, or the figures, because he was made out of a very dodgy gold plastic, he is very brittle, and over time he gets even more brittle, which is why I generally don't plug him in with his foot onto the actual air chariot. In fact, I generally tend to use this guy on the air chariot, but because we have this new one, we shall use him. This guy's actually surprisingly has held up pretty well for his age. I mean, usually figures like this, the legs are super loose, but you can see they're not that loose. But he has a really weird head, in the sense that his helmet is glued onto his head, and I've seen pictures of this head without the helmet on, and it looks weird because it's slightly deformed. He doesn't have a lower jaw because the helmet piece actually covers that. So if you were to take the helmet off, he'd look a bit like Jason Voorhees from the Friday 13th films. So he has a kind of mangled head look to it. But for the most part, we want to see this new version on this. So this is the air chariot. It's a very simple machine. Now mine's not in the best of conditions. It seems to be popping apart, but the idea was this vent was like the air, it was kind of like a drone sort of type thing. This would fly the machine. There was a twisting piece on the back here for turning this fan, air fan or intake fan, whichever way you want to call it. There's 2 cannons on either side. Then it came in pieces, so this would be all assembled. The front piece is a separate piece, and this snake head, what they did for the 25th anniversary one, which I thought was pretty cool, is actually had an opening mouth for the snake head, which is something the original one never had, which is a bit of a shame because it looked like it could do it, and I think it did have an opening mouthpiece in the cartoon. But we can get, we just have to position him, so we have to bend his knees a little bit just so he's not so tall. and then get his hands into a more driving or handlebar holding position. So let me see if we can get him onto this. I might have to do it off screen because it is a little tricky. Try and get this guy lined up while on screen. So bear with me a moment. It is doable, I believe. So yeah, I thought that headpiece would fall off. It's on a little peg. Let's see if we can get him on it. Just lay his legs out a bit. So the hands on. The hand should just slide across that. There we go. And you just move the hand to this. Put his foot peg on the peg. And then we'll just line this piece up. You can see it's just on a little peg. It just fits in. So if you want, you can have him flying his air chariot. He looks pretty neat on it. As this is cartoon based one, he's a little bit slimmer than the action figure and then the original action figure version, but he does look pretty cool. Always liked Serpentor. I thought it was kind of a cool design, and the background history for him was pretty interesting as well, that he's like a clone of great generals. His DNA was taken from some of the greatest kind of villains of the real world. He's in, it was like Genghis Khan, and I'm just trying to think, was Julius Caesar one of the Roman? It was some Roman emperor as well. I think he was taking DNA from. It's all mentioned in the cartoon version of Arise, Serpentor Arise, which is basically a origin story episode for Serpentor and how Dr. Mindbender came up with the concept of creating him. And he also has DNA from Sergeant Slaughter in him, which, because they used one of the greatest, their idea was using one as the greatest tactician or something along those lines from the G.I. Joes against them. So they used Sergeant Slaughter's DNA as well. So he is a mishmash of different people's DNAs to create the perfect Emperor of Cobra. So he is a really cool figure. As I said, I picked this guy up from Big Bad Toy Store. He is available at the time of this recording, anyway, at least, along with some of the other figures from the Reaction Plus line. I do believe they have announced one or two other figures that should be coming down the line, which is interesting. This was the only one that I really wasn't interested in, because he's kind of a new take on a classic character, even though some of the other ones are similar, again, in vain. They're either characters that were never made in action figure form for the vintage line, or they're ones based on the cartoon appearances that didn't get any figures in the vintage line as well. So it is worth checking some of them out. If you're a fan of O-ring figures, do recommend having a look at them and seeing if there's any that pop out to you. Again, as I said, this is the one that popped out to me because I quite like Serpentor as a character. I know he's not everyone's favorite cup of tea because the not live action movie, but the animated 89 movie rejigged his origins slightly. But and he kind of in the, was it Sunbow? Not Sunbow, the Deke animation series, he kind of got sidelined. So it is kind of interesting. But he is a good character, he is a good figure. I do recommend grabbing him, and if you do, I'll throw a link in the description below, and I will wrap this up here. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and this little quick brief look at the Reaction Plus Serpentor figure. And as always, please feel free to like, comment and subscribe to my channel, and thanks for watching. Cheers.